Right, so the Wesley Streeting, the heir in waiting to our NHS as Starmer's Shadow Health Secretary, has been attacking the health service yet again, it seems, calling it a 20th century service that hasn't changed with the times, isn't fit for the modern era. That the only people complaining about his plans to bring in more privatisation, more of the private health sector into the NHS, are just a bunch of middle-class lefties. And he's written all of this, of course, in the Murdoch Scum of all papers too, just to nail on who his intended audience are and whose votes he's really trying to attract here. But if comments like that make you think Labour are going to rescue and save the NHS, being led by a gang of red Tories that are about as likeable as a boil on your bum that you'll now be waiting months and months to have lopped off and probably face being charged for as well if the NHS gets privatised much more, well, the clip from Good Morning Britain from earlier today, the paper round as it was, Ed Balls there, no stranger to red Toryism himself, of course, looking at the Scum newspaper and reading aloud from it, without protective eyewear either. That's risky stuff, Ed. You need to look after your health a little bit. But he was laying out the fetid future for our NHS with Streeting in charge of it, effectively, which doesn't really sound any different from the Tories and what they would do if they remained in charge. More money being poured on the NHS would be more waste, comparing it to water through a leaky bucket as young Wesley did. The service a relic of the last century as well that hasn't kept up with the times, isn't fit for the modern era. And anyone opposed to his plans for more privatisation is just a middle-class lefty standing against working-class council estate boy Wes and people like him. As much as it pains me to acknowledge the response from Tory boy Andrew Pearce on that, he was absolutely right to say right at the end there that this is what the Tories think, because it's absolutely true. It is total Tory policy. Let's deal with this matter of the NHS not being fit for the 21st century first, of being a relic of the last century, which is unfit for the modern era. Because as recently as 2013, the NHS was still ranked the best health service in the world. Tory NHS reforms not yet having done the damage they've been later shown to have done. The reforms that allowed far more privatisation into the NHS, the Andrew Lansley reforms, asset stripping for profit as it essentially has been. That is over a decade into the 21st century, though, so Streeting's claims are dishonest, and he's taking people for fools. He claims to want more reforms, so less money is being poured into the service. But when his reforms amount to more privatisation, more private health intervention, what does he think those private interests are going to do this for? Fresh air? Pure altruism? The good of the country? No. They want money. And if Streeting won't provide it, yet want them to run the services instead, obviously they'd end up having to charge for it, wouldn't they? Damn it. That'd make it all a bit of a busted flush, wouldn't it? Destruction of the NHS, everybody would see it then, wouldn't they? Because as long as it is free at point of use, people won't wake up to the fact it is becoming more and more expensive, and major surgery, as Streeting refers to it in the article, code for more NHS reforms, which, given Streeting's pro-private health leanings, surely means privatisation, isn't the fix for that, because it's the cause for years now. And as such, Streeting's plans will see NHS costs increase, all paid for out of the public purse. Profiteers profit, but we pick up the tab. The more the NHS is made to therefore fail and cost more, the more Streeting will bleat that the service isn't fit for purpose, but in true Thatcherite style, it will have been engineered that way, won't it? Just as every public service Thatcher ever flogged off was made to appear to be failing through underinvestment and underfunding, so it is going to happen with the NHS now. And just like all those formerly public services now privatised, from water to electric, gas, and all the rest, they all cost us far more now for a much worse service than they would have done if the profits were just sunk back into the service and not instead siphoned off into shareholders' pockets. That brings me on to the next analogy of Streeting's from that clip, that more money being poured into the NHS is like filling a leaky bucket. Well, yeah, it is, except the water flowing out of those holes is akin to cash flowing out of the NHS budget and being caught in said shareholders' pockets, isn't it? That is profits for wealthy individuals or corporations taken out of the NHS when a fully funded, fully state-run service would not be a bucket with holes in it. The best way to save money in the NHS, therefore, is to take the profiteering out of it. Why is it that no matter what it is, unless somebody is getting rich off the back of it, it's not considered worthy? That is Tory mantra. That's Tory ideology. Why is the health of our nation not seen as something important enough to be above that notion of profiteering and someone having to be able to get rich off of it? It used to be that the NHS did turn a profit from certain areas, such as drugs research, before that got defunded and palmed off elsewhere. But that was always sunk back into more research for the benefit of us all. Why is that not reason enough? Well, to the right party, of course, it would be. It is. There are parties that stand for that, such as the Greens. But to big business creeps like the Tories and Starmer's Labour, they need money coming into their rotten parties, and so opportunities for potential donors need to be opened up elsewhere. Streeting himself has taken £193,725 in donations with private health links, according to the Every Doctor UK interactive map that tracks such donations amongst MPs. So what does that tell you? Privatisation is simply a waste of money when it takes funding out of the NHS, and shareholders always want more and more year on year greater returns on their investments. A failing service is what we get back as they get richer. Privatisation has always and will always fail. If you don't like that, though, it must make you a middle-class lefty, apparently, according to Wesley. I'm not middle-class by any stretch. I'm the son of a postman and a cleaner. Streeting was brought up on a council estate in a single-parent household, but hanging on to that as something he stands for now is an insult to the sensibilities of every ordinary working-class person up and down the country. You've left your roots behind. You've fled as far as possible from them, sunshine. You've been climbing a greasy pole to get away from it every day since, Wesley. You write for Rupert Murdoch now. Here again with this article. He's no friend of ordinary people. He never has been. He's been a pariah for us for decades. And being left-wing is where Labour is supposed to be. That you spit that out as some kind of an insult shows that party truly is dead and buried, and choosing between two different versions of the Tory party isn't a choice, it's a punishment. It's like self-immolation. What did we do to deserve having our health service destroyed like this? And why are you still voting for one party or another, set on continuing to spit on you, pretending they're going to change things when they never will? Because if you can't afford private healthcare, you cannot afford to vote for the Tories or for Labour. The party that created the NHS is now the party, it seems, that's hell-bent on finishing it off for good by carrying on right where the Tories leave off. Nye Bevan must be spinning in his grave. The creator of the NHS, the guy who is famously quoted as saying, and these are words we should all remember, the NHS will last as long as there are folk left with the faith to fight for it. Wes Streeting isn't going to fight for it. He doesn't want anyone to fight for it. So why should we vote for him or anyone else in his rancid party then, if this is what they want to do, if they just want to carry on with Tory health reforms? It's not getting the Tories out, is it? If it be Tory or Labour, the NHS still loses. Still, Streeting has plenty of problems on the electoral front as things stand anyway, as pro-privatisation and indeed pro-Israel Streeting is facing a challenge for his vulnerable Ilford North seat by British Palestinian activist Leanne Mohammed, and she's building up quite the head of steam here. Find out all about her and her campaign to unseat Streeting on this video recommendation here, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.